After that, I think the next thing is to see how our own faith tradition can speak in meaningful and hopeful ways to some of the challenges and questions that they're struggling with. I know that this isn't easy to do, and sometimes it actually means changing what we do or who is in leadership in our context in order to be able to address their situations and their questions. I think our systems generally are resistant to those two things, changing our dialogue, changing our leadership. So I know what I propose in this sermon is somewhat radical, but I think that if we want the church to matter, and more importantly, if we want the gospel to be heard, then we need to actually consider fairly radical options in order for that to happen.
You quoted Beaumont, the theologian who had been held captive in a World War II Allied POW camp. His faith in Jesus Christ gave him the courage and hope he needed so he could work toward trying to address the horrors and messiness of the world. And he encourages us to live a life that's seized by the Spirit. That's a great phrase. As if the world Jesus promises is already a possibility we can commit ourselves to. And that's what matters. Would you say more about how we can live a life that's seized by the Spirit?
Yes, I think that we definitely are in a day and age where activism is no longer a fringe aspect of how people see our society or their lives. So we're back to a point where people living out their ethical values, their moral commitments, their fundamental understanding of who we are in the world is happening. Except the church hasn't caught up, I think, in the way that it should. Churches, I find, sometimes are very reluctant to actually say where they stand on important social and political issues because they don't want to offend anyone. But I think that the passage and Moulton's witness demands that we actively live out what our convictions are, that we take a stand on account of the gospel and the love we've experienced through Jesus Christ on social and political issues. Until we do that, I think the church will seem sort of a bland and sort of historical artifact that just sits there in society, and people will say, well, what did we use this for? What difference did this make? I think our history shows that we have made great impact on society at critical points in time, but people aren't seeing it now. And if we can be that faith community, if we can be that visible salt and light in the world, but actively doing things in the world, then maybe people will pay attention. And yes, we might repel some, but will matter to their lives, even those people who are offended.
Hardy, what's one thing from your sermon that you hope our listeners will keep in mind in the days ahead?
I hope that people, particularly people of the church, will keep in mind that if we are not doing something to impact or change the world that's around us, then we are probably not seized by the Holy Spirit in the way that we're called to do.
Hardy Camp, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Dave One is the voice of America's mainline Protestant churches. Visit us online at day1.org. Our program is recorded and edited by Donald Jones and produced by Peter Wallace. Thank you for joining us. I'm Sherry Miller, wishing you all God's blessings on Day One and forever.
Another unseasonably warm evening across the Mid-South. Overnight lows falling to the lower 70s with lots of sunshine in the forecast for your Sunday. Daytime highs warming to the lower 90s with heat indices at 95. I'm tracking higher heat indices in the extended forecast to find out how warm things will feel. Tune into Good Morning Memphis starting at 6.
The Tigers play here. 600 WREC, Memphis, 92.1 FM, WEGR HD2 Memphis, an iHeart radio station.
Welcome to the Daily Dive Weekend Edition. I'm Oscar Ramirez, and every week my producer Miranda and I explore the top stories making waves in the news, and some that are just plain interesting. We connect you with the journalists and people who know the story, and bring you news without the noise, so you can make an informed decision. You can catch a new episode of The Daily Dive every Monday through Friday, and it's ready when you wake up. On the weekend edition, we will be bringing you some of the best stories from the week. America was first introduced to him in December 2001. He became known as the American Taliban, and he was just released from prison a few days ago. John Walker Lynn was just released after serving 17 years of a 20-year sentence for providing support to the Taliban. We spoke to John Woolfolk. He's a reporter for the San Jose Mercury News to talk about who the American Taliban is and the big question, how does a former jihadist get integrated back into society?
There are conflicting stories about him. What we do know is his background. He grew up originally from the Maryland area, came of age and went to high school in Marin County. And during that time, when he was about 16 years old, he decided to convert to Islam. And his parents were supportive of that. This is all in the late 90s. This is before 9/11 and all that. And when he was 17, he wanted to travel to the Middle East, to the country of Yemen, to study the Quran. He did that for about 9 months, then came back. And after about a year back home, went back out first to Yemen and then to Pakistan, and then ended up in Afghanistan.